Hello, everyone. I'm Dennis Razzie. I'm the Associate Artistic Director of the Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival. And here we are with another edition of PSF at Home. And I'm at home in my lovely house with my wife and two cats. And I'm looking at a video screen, looking at a good dear friend of mine, Chris Coucill, who looks very rested and comfortable in front of his fireplace at his lovely home. And Chris, you're such a dear friend and just an all-around terrific person. And it's just an honor to be able to talk to you this way and to catch up as we do and to let people know about, how our relationship has developed since we first met. So I want to go back to when we first met and see what we both remember of it. I recall that Patrick Mulcahy and I were desperate in a search for a really wonderful Don Quixote for the festival's first musical, Mantle of Mancha, and that was in 2004. And we had auditioned all kinds of guys in New York City and hadn't found a guy that really, made it for us. And then a friend of both of ours, I guess maybe, Mike Tylo. You know Mike?
Yep. Mike and I went to grad school together at the Hillberry, which you went to.
Yeah, we should say that we should have known, you and I should have known each other from grad school, but we kind of were two ships passing in the night because we weren't there at the exact same time. I was there when Wayne Turney was there. We overlapped, and I heard tales of you, but
I was there when
we never met back then. You were there when?
I was there. Wayne and I started the same year together. He was in the PhD program. I was in the MFA program. And you came the year after, I think. And I knew Wayne and Harper, his wife, before they were married, of course.
Sure.
And we have other alumni from there that we all know. But Michael Tylo was one of my classmates, and he worked at PSF for a number of years in the not only in theater, but in the audiovisual department for television, didn't he?
Yes, he along with Jerry Schubert started the TV film program. Yeah. So anyway, Mike Tylo called me up and said, you ought to audition this guy, Chris Coucill, who's from our alma mater back there at Wayne State. And we got in touch with you, and you came down to Center Valley, and it was just Patrick and I in the auditorium, and you sang for us and did several monologues for us as Don Quixote. And Patrick and I were like flabbergasted. We went to the back of the auditorium afterwards and said, "Oh my God, this guy is Don Quixote. we have found him. How could we be so fortunate to have found this guy?" And,
well, I want to say I was fortunate to have found you both because that was the beginning of a whole series of not only parts and various collaborations, but I come to PSF not just as an actor, but as an avid fan. And we come every summer. If I'm in the show or not, we're there for as many shows as we can see, because we are such. We've seen a lot of theater in our lives. We go to New York. We have subscriptions, and one of our fondest of all the theaters we go to is PSF.
Oh, thank you for saying so. Tell us a little bit about your Broadway career in musical theater that you had, before we got to know you.
Well, there's an interesting parallel that would happen in my life because I did Crazy for You last spring.
Right.
And with a wonderful group of people, Haley Ponchon and Danny. Danny was so fabulous. Anyway, it was a great bunch, and Gina Lamparello did a great job directing. But the reason I mention it is because in '92, I had done the national touring, first national company of the original production. And people think, well, it's an old show. Well, actually, it was written in '92 and got the Tony Award for best musical that year. And I had such a wonderful warm spot in my heart for this show. And so when Gina said, "Would you like to do it?" I was overjoyed. So I came full circle in about 20 years apart. And I played Blank in the first when I was doing the tour, and then I got to do Everett in this one, which was a joy. So anyway, Broadway was slow in coming for me, but it eventually came in my career. That was the first production contract I did. In '98, I got into Annie Get Your Gun with Bernadette Peters and Tom Wopat, and took over for Ron Holgate in the role of Buffalo Bill, and played him for a better part of a year.
Oh, I wish I had seen that.
Oh, it was fun show. And I went full circle on that too, but I played it at the Forest at one point. No, I'm sorry. I played it at the, well, anyway, in Philadelphia. And so I've had a couple of revisits with various parts, but that was a wonderful experience, a great cast. And we got the best revival Tony that year. And then I got into Kiss Me Kate with Brian Stokes Mitchell and Mara Maisie.
Oh my God, I saw that.
Did you?
Yeah.
I was General Harrison Howe.
Oh my God. See, I didn't know you then.
Well, remember how I had long hair? I don't know. It was pretty long.
Uh-huh.
If you remember. And they wanted me to cut it because I was playing a guy that looked like, he was supposed to be military. And they said, you have to cut it. And I didn't want to. And the hairdresser cut it all the way up and gave me sidewalls. And I pulled all the hair up into the top of my hat. And I had on a General Douglas MacArthur hat. I could stuff it all up under there. So I would do the show, and then I'd come out at intermission and have hair halfway down my back. So I got to go incognito. After that, I did The Graduate. I understudied Mr. Robinson and went on for him. And that was a lovely bunch of people. So anyway, those were the highlights of those years. I did a number of off-Broadway shows and leads and whatnot, but those were the highlights. And
those are some highlights.
Oh, they were great. They were great.
Yeah.
And they were my dream. When I was a kid, I thought, if I want to act, I want to bat with the big boys. I want to go, be challenged and be with the people that are really going to challenge me. And they always did. And I met a lot of wonderful people along the way too. And I was very, very lucky, I think.
Hey, where are you originally from?
Well, I'm a New Jersey guy. I'm from South Jersey, finally.
Oh my God, I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah, I know. I feel Western almost.
Yeah.
My father was an actor, and I grew up in the business. Although he had quit acting and gone into radio, but when I grew up, we took part in small plays. My mother wrote shows, and we did them out in the backyard. We had a set and a stage. Our father directed. We did radio shows because my father was a radio announcer. And so by the time I was 15, I felt like I had a kind of a jump on things. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but that seemed to be, I seemed to have some, because of my dad, I got my voice, because I was tall because of my dad, etc. And I had some attributes that I thought, well, I can use these. And I wanted to make sure I did whatever I did well. And I was a mediocre cellist and a much better actor.
Do you still have a cello?
No.
No.
No. I was never going to be a soloist, and I wanted to express myself. And acting was the only avenue for me.
Well, you certainly have succeeded as an actor. I mean, what a career you have had, and what a great, resume of wonderful roles and productions that you've been involved with. It's just astounding. Let's go back to Man of La Mancha.
Yeah.
What do you remember from working on that production?
Oh, I have amazing memories of that production. First, I have memory of working with you, and we got to know each other in that show. And the thing that I always remember about that experience was that although we had sometimes different ideas, I didn't feel there was any ego in it. It had to do with what we wanted the show to be. And that told me so much, not just about you, but about PSF, because the show was the centerpiece. you picked the show and then you picked your actors, which is unusual for many theaters, especially with a big role like that. And you were so focused on making the show what you wanted. You know, the show was the whole point. It wasn't any actor, it wasn't any performance, and telling the story. So I remember that was a wonderful experience. And we had great people in it, Alicia Irving and a bunch of other people, and
Peter Gregus.
my core. Yes, Peter
Mike
Gregus, he was fabulous, absolutely. So another thing I recall was I was stunned by the production values. Will Newhart had done a great set, and Matt Given had done fabulous sound design. And my wife came to see it, Liz, and she wasn't expecting the kind of production values and full-throated show that she got. And she said she knew she was in for a ride when the staircase came down, and Matt Given had done that wonderful sound effect of the chain links going through the pulleys, and then it hit the bottom, big boom, and she was stunned. She thought, "What?" I mean, she knew she was in for a great ride, and she was. Yeah.
Yeah, that scene design was just really remarkable. Yeah, I remember that was the first time too that we used Eric Halligan to light a musical.
Oh, Eric was wonderful. The lighting on that was superb. I forgot to mention Eric.
Yeah, and I have another memory of Patrick and I standing behind the wall in the back of the theater on opening night and just saying, this is transporting. We feel like we're not here in Center Valley. We feel like we're in New York or someplace else. This, the production values and the performances were of that kind of quality. It really set the festival, off on a really, good path. The festival hadn't really ventured into musical theater before that. And it was our first, stab at it. And, since then it's become a major part, I think, of what we have to offer the audience every year.
And if I remember right, you took off. You really took off. Everything you did, you had a golden touch. I mean, it would not have gone forward with just the strength of that show. You proved over and over and over how valuable and how rich the musicals could be. Even the old chestnuts like Oklahoma. You think, what, Oklahoma, am I going? It was delightful. It spoke to us now. It was really, and Sweeney Todd, I think, was as good as any production I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Sweeney Todd some more. In Sweeney Todd, you got to play the bad guy, and you're so nice. It's just,
well,
I mean,
sometimes that's,
and yet you can be quite villainous.
It was. I was so happy you cast me in that. One of the reasons I was happy was because I had seen the original production with Len Cariou and Angela Lansbury.
Me too.
It was a great production. And I remember Linedeck, who played the judge in that, was superb.
He was.
And I adored the music he had, especially Pretty Women. And I always had a soft spot in my heart for the music of it. And I didn't know if I had the evil, lecherous man inside of me, but I knew I had the music delighted me. And to have a chance to do that was one of the things that I dreamed about, and I got a chance to do it. I was so happy to do that. And that in that particular production, Dee Rossioli and William Michaels were just amazing. So anyway, we were talking about things that maybe people haven't seen, but the production values on that too were superb. The moving trolleys that we had, the walkways, it was gorgeous. It was really spectacular. One of the things that was different about that, and I don't want to go on too much about this, but Dee brought a sexy humor to the role of Mrs. Lovett that was not just delicious, but illuminating. Mm-hmm. And it made the Grand Guignol blood aspect of it less horrifying and more kind of dazzling. It was fascinating to watch. Her real human, you knew why she loved Sweeney, and William Michaels was very handsome and she was very beautiful. And you could tell why they had a relationship at one time. It all made sense.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
And Pretty Women was one of my favorite moments in the show. The blending of your voice. You have this rich, low bass voice as well as, a lovely baritone. But you have a really resonant, rich, lower register. And the combination of your two voices on that song was just stunning. Just stunning.
Thank you for saying that. It was one of the pleasures of all my years in theater. It really was. I want to thank you, if I haven't enough, for including me in that cast. I just thought it was great.
No, it was a great time. Great time.
Yeah.
It was the second time I had directed Sweeney Todd. The first time I had done it with students at the school, but being able to do it with professional actors of your caliber, it was great moment in my life.
There are a lot of high points you've had over the years, and I've seen a lot of them. But I think that might have been the top. Yeah, I just thought that was it's an especially rich cast, rich production, rich show. I've always thought it was his Sondheim's masterpiece.
It is.
And, yeah.
So you've also done a lot of Shakespeare with PSF, and I know you have some interesting thoughts about how acting in Shakespeare and acting in musical theater kind of feed each other and complement each other in some ways.
Well, I spoke to some of the supporters of PSF. I think it was last summer, and we were talking about this very thing. And at the time, I said, there's an amazing different gear that you go into when you do a Shakespeare than when you go into a musical. And it's defined for musicals like a clock. It's a rhythmic, non-stop puzzle that keeps going. It has to be right on rhythm. It requires the rhythm for the comedy or the whatever. It requires the rhythm for the dancing and the singing. There is you start the ride and you don't question. You just take the ride and you hit every mark. And it's a very thrilling and exacting and very challenging form. But when you're doing Shakespeare, you're trying to plumb the depths of thought. So you're working with words in a way that don't have to do with hitting the mark as much as understanding what the layering of ideas are. You never get a chance to do that in musicals. You're simply trying to hit those points that you have to hit. In Shakespeare, every time you do it, you're jumping off a cliff, trying to find some better, interesting, layered understanding of what you're expressing, how you're expressing it. It's an amazing difference. And both are thrilling.
Yeah. And I remember you, very well in our production of King Lear as Lear, a role that you were, born to play. And I hope you get to do it again. I think it's just such a marvelous role for you. What was that like, being able to, work on that titanic role?
I won't take too much time with this, but the thing that was most fascinating to me was the play itself. I had never liked, and it wasn't because of the play. It wasn't the play's fault or Shakespeare's fault. It's a great play, but I had always seen productions where I thought, why do I care about this man? Why should I? He does terrible things. And then he goes throughout the play and just goes downhill, and he ends up being responsible for so many people's deaths. And so when I took on I was lucky enough to work with Fontaine Sire.
Fontaine Sire, yes.
That wonderful director who we've now lost. I said, I want to find out why anybody should want to spend time with this man. Why do we want to be here? And she said, okay, I'll go along with you on that. If you go along with me on not pulling back, on being really the bastard that you are at the beginning of the play, I don't want you to be a Mr. Nice Guy or pull back or, want to be liked as an actor. I want you to just go for it. And so I said, okay, it's a deal. And we accomplished both, I think. And the secret we found, I think it's what we found, was not in the performance of Lear. It was in the relationship he has with Kent, Gloucester, and the Fool.
Mm-hmm.
They give us a glimpse into who he was at one time, how great he was, how much they wanted to follow him, what a good leader he was. Their kindness and their care of him is so important to us understanding that there was a man at one time who was worth watching. And you're catching him at the moment of great frailty and falling apart. That's the tragedy. But unless you get that relationship throughout the play between those three and Lear and how they support him, and you believe in what he used to be, you lose any empathy for him, I think.
Yeah, they love him, don't they? They really love him.
Yeah.
And you have to know why. If he's, that there's reasons for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
well, I think you achieved that very well.
Well, we had great actors. We had Chris Faith. We had David Anderson, who was just magnificent as King.
Oh, terrific.
They, as far as I was concerned, they were the ones that really made it possible. And Rachel Joffrey, too, wonderful Cordelia.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and we had Susan Riley Stevens. We had a great bunch of people.
Yeah, it was a great cast.
Yeah,
and it was neat that it was in the smaller theater, in the Schubert Theater, which gave it an intimacy that you don't often get, with productions of Lear.
Well, or productions of Shakespeare in general. I've worked in
Right.
outdoor theaters a lot, and you have these huge spaces you're filling with sound and being larger than life. But in that space, there could be such intimacy, which was a great luxury in that part.
Yeah. Well, then you got to be in that wonderful production of Hamlet, Patrick's production of Hamlet, I believe, and you played the ghost. Yeah.
Yes. And
that's a tough role.
I want to say that it's a fascinating experience for me, because as far as I'm concerned, the costumer, Sam Fleming, she put me in a costume that was to die for. Eric gave us great lighting, and the atmosphere, you couldn't lose with this thing they gave me. I mean, it was just like walking into the best possible movie set, and I just wrote it. It was just so supportive. Justin Adams, I'm not hyping this. I think it was the clearest, most definitive Hamlet I've seen. He nailed so many of the things that we grapple with and made them look like he was just living up there. It was a masterful performance. And Greg Wood as Claudius too.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a wonderful photograph of you as the ghost in Patrick's office, a Lee Butz photograph, and it's in that wonderful long coat. That coupled with your, white hair and beard, it's just one of my favorite photographs of all time.
There's a description, of course, that Hamlet gives to his mother in the bedroom scene, and he talks about the, looking like Jupiter, and I've always had that in my mind, and I rarely get to see a costume that lives up to that description. I thought that costume did.
It did. And Chris, you also worked again with Patrick on what I thought was a terrific production of Shakespeare in Love. Yeah. And I had my real doubts about whether, that film, would transfer to stage. I hadn't seen it on stage before Patrick's production, but I thought you all, achieved marvelously that transition and gave us something that was, in some ways, even better than the film. So what was the experience of working on that play like?
It was, well, first of all, again, we had a Cadillac cast. We had, Luigi Soto and Marin, and we had Doc Watson, and just such a great bunch of people. So that is a hallmark of PSF. You are the best casters in the biz, and you got these great people. And then we had this amazing set where we had crossovers upstage and above, and it required that we flip from being the audience to feeling like we were backstage. And that was not clear to me when I read the script how that was going to happen. It was very, very essential part of the play, and also tricky staging. And I thought that Patrick managed to do that with the most graceful, the inventive stuff. It was just beautifully done. And we had that script is literate because essentially it comes from Stoppard. I know it was adapted by somebody else, but it's essentially Stoppard.
It is Tom Stoppard for sure.
The language is glorious, and it achieves something that seems impossible, to make you believe that you are there in that time, because the language has to be rich enough for you to believe these people speak the language of Shakespeare's writing and also live in this place. And that's an almost impossible task. And that script accomplishes it. And the actors were well up to it. We had a great bunch, and it was so much fun to do. I can't tell you. It was a pleasure to walk out there every single time.
Oh, the audience just ate it up. They just loved it.
Dennis, I want to just briefly say something I said last summer as well at that talk. PSF is an extraordinary theater in a very unusual location. It is a destination theater. You don't go to that theater to get to anything else. You go to that theater for the shows. And you accomplish two things which I've rarely seen in my life. One, a level of excellence that is just the top of the line, at the same time as using Shakespeare to reach out to your local audiences. The people who really support PSF are the local people who have come to adore the Shakespeare. And I remember when we did Lear, I said, well, how is it we did Lear this summer? And they said, because the audience demanded. They were ready for Lear. They said, we want to see Lear. And I would talk to the volunteers, to the audience members who came. These were people of every walk of life. And they are now a part of a larger world that PSF has been able to give them. And they have contributed to. There is no better bunch of people in the world than that community of people. I adore the friends I've made up there. But anyway, it's a special relationship you have with both theater and with your community. It's a great place.
Well, Chris, just to wrap this up, I want to thank you for being part of this dream with us. You have contributed so much to the festival. There are a few key actors that we, consider our, core group of actors in the company, and couldn't do the work without these wonderful talents that keep coming back to work with us, and we keep wanting to have you back. So thank you for all of your great performances, and like I said at the beginning of this, just for being the great person that you are.
Thank you, Dennis. I really appreciate that. And thank you for your friendship over these many years.
Thank you too, my friend.
Yeah.
All right. We hope you enjoyed this session of PSF at Home, and tune in next time for another great interview with another great artist.